Hi, I'm Clutching. This is going to be a tutorial for how to play Upstream in all categories. This will be applicable to your first pass in all gems 105% and secret ending, and your only pass in any percent. This tutorial is intended for PC users, but console users might also find some use out of it. So there are three ways to play this level. You can do the easy way, the medium way, and the hard way. There's going to be a lot of repeated information because I'm going to assume that you're only going to watch one of them. But if you do decide to watch multiple, just be aware of that. I only recommend watching the hard version if you're at like a low mid 41 level in any percent. The medium version if you're at like a 42 to 46 level in any percent, and the easy version just for 47 plus. There will be timestamps in the description and the scrub bar for the different versions. So starting off with the easy version, you're going to want to keep floaties at least for the very beginning, for that very hard jump at the start. So every time you load into a level, Crash's jumps are a little bit floatier, and you get rid of this by spinning while in the air. Keeping Crash in this state makes the leaf skip near the beginning of the level quite easy, and it's just useful for making jumps earlier than you usually could in general, but it's really nothing you have to worry about too much. Just make sure you keep them for this leaf skip. You can spin this box and keep floaties as long as you're grounded for the entire duration of your spin, but I would highly recommend just ignoring the box for now. Now for the leaf skip itself, when you get to this rocky platform that the box is on, you want to go to the right side of it, about where I am. Then when you get to the end of the rock, do a full jump onto the lily pad and buffer a jump off of it. Buffering a jump is when you press the jump button before Crash actually lands, so then the first thing he does when he does land is jump. You'll see in this frame here that I'm not pressing X on the controller, and then on the next frame before I've actually landed, I press X and a jump comes out afterwards. Do be wary because buffer windows are not enormous. You do have to actually press the jump button like 10 frames or so before you land. Then as you're running across the stone platform before the leaf, do a full jump before you start falling, run across the leaf a little bit and do another full jump, and you should clear the gap. The rest of the level for the most part is just jumping where you can, since jumping is faster than running. It's faster to do long jumps rather than short jumps uphill, so when I get to the bottom of this tree I like to do 4 long jumps. You also want to snipe the fish into the TNT if you can. If you do miss that first snipe, then there is another opportunity. Just stand about where I'm standing and just spin when that fish is in the middle, and that'll also hit the TNT. A nice visual cue to help you learn where to stand for the backward snipe is just to look at the patterns in the ground and where they are respective to Crash's feet, and you'll start to get an idea for it. And another thing you want to pay attention to is every time you're coming off a leaf, you want to make it so that you jump as early as you possibly can. It's not an enormous deal if you wait a little bit for safety, but you know, every frame counts. Again, just try to do as many long jumps up the tree as you can. Then there's one final little trick when you get to the second last leaf here. So you want to get on the final leaf so you can get off of it and to the end of the level as soon as possible, right? Well, in that case, you want to activate the trigger to get the leaf to start moving towards you as soon as possible. And that trigger is when Crash crosses this little invisible line right about here. So if Crash were to pass this trigger point before the leaf that you're standing on does, then you would activate the final leaf earlier. As long as you prioritize your safety, there's really no reason not to do this. It can save up to like 3/4 of a second-ish if it's done really well. And yeah, that about concludes the easy way to play Upstream's first pass. So the medium difficulty version, most commonly known as the damage abuse cycle, saves about a second over the easy version. The goal of the damage abuse cycle is to reach this final plant as it snaps. This saves having to wait on the final leaf. However, the time save that you can get from this method is quite limited because this plant starts snapping at the very beginning of the level and you'll reach it at the same point every time. The reason you want to reach the plant while it's snapping is because while it's snapping, its hurt box is activated, which is much larger than its hitbox. When Crash touches the hurt box, it makes him bounce, and you're able to easily land on the hitbox and proceed. So starting out, you want to grab the mask at the back of the level. Don't worry, this time is more than made up for by skipping the final leaf later. Keep floaties if you can at this point while you perform leaf skip. If the terms floaties and leaf skip sound unfamiliar to you, please watch the beginning of the easy section. Do long jumps up this hill and snipe the fish into the TNT. To snipe the fish into the TNT, you want to be beside the checkpoint box as you break it, run into it, and then run forward, and you should get to the fish when it's on the right side. Holding the spin button instead of pressing it should help too. If you can't get to the fish in time, then you're probably going to be too slow to catch the cycle as well, so you really need to work on getting to that fish in time. A simple way to save time if you're slow getting to that point is to spend as little time on the leaf as possible on leaf skip. You'll see here that I straight up buffered the jump and didn't spend any time running on the leaf. You don't have to play it that optimally, this is just like a fast example. And just as a quick side note, due to how you snipe the fish, you are probably going to lose floaties, so there's no real point in keeping them after this point anyway. Because on the off chance that you do keep floaties, you want to play the rest of the level the same way each time anyway. Jump off the leaf and onto the lily pad here as quick and early as you can. This is something you should also be doing with the leaf right after fish snipe. And for the rest of the level, you just want to play fast for the most part. Just jump as much as you can, buffer jumps where you can, make sure you do long jumps up the tree. And then the very end, as per usual, is played differently in this version. So you want to make it to the purple plant as it snaps, which is a map cycle. It starts snapping the nanosecond you load into the map. And there are going to be inconsistencies with how you get there. Sometimes you get there slightly faster than other times, so how exactly do you know when you're supposed to jump out? Well, while all of the leaves that move back and forward are local cycles, the rotation of these leaves are not. They start rotating as soon as the map loads in. So the position of the leaf as a visual cue is moot, but the rotation of it is accurate in representing when the plant is going to snap. So when you arrive at the second last leaf, you want to stand at this bottom corner that Crash is standing on right here. And then again, paying attention to the rotation of the leaf, shout out to Austin for figuring this association out, when it is sideways, you want to start running forward. This is the first frame that I start running forward here. I know it's not completely sideways yet, but you do have some wiggle room to work with because the plant is snapping for a long time. But just try to aim to start running forward at about sideways. Then just jump off the leaf when you reach the end of it, buffer a jump off the lily pad, buffer another jump off the grass patch onto the leaf, jump off the leaf, and you should reach the damage abuse in perfect timing. Like I said, the window for this is pretty huge. If you mess up by jumping off the second to last leaf too early like I do here, then you can just run across the last leaf for a little bit and that should be good enough compensation. Alternatively, if you're a little bit late coming off the leaf, then the hitbox, like I said, it's enormous and it lasts forever. You will be fine. Just make sure you pay attention though to the second to last leaf being sideways in its rotation when you go. Pay really close attention to that and you shouldn't have any problems. Now the hard cycle is just like the damage abuse cycle, the medium cycle, except you don't take damage, you just try to land on the hitbox with floaties. If you don't know what floaties are or how they work, respectfully you shouldn't be looking at this section. So the damage abuse cycle has you aiming for the enormous, difficult to miss red circle. Honestly, it's probably even bigger than displayed here. Whereas the difficult cycle, the hard, whatever you want to call it, has you aiming for the blue, which is pretty representative of what the hitbox actually is. It really is just the plant. Hell, honestly, it may even be a little bit thinner. So obviously you need to keep floaties the whole time. This box is optional, but I recommend it if you're at this level. You don't have to chain the jump at leaf skip, but you probably should if you can, because the quicker you play the majority of the level, the easier the final section ends up being because you get to run across the leaf for longer. Something else about leaf skip is you want to minimize left-right movement, so only move as far right as you absolutely have to if you can help it. You'll see here that I'm like half off the edge of the log. And furthermore, you want your left and right movements to be subtle if you can. Like, don't go really hard right, just go forward and very, very slightly to the right, which is a really hard direction to get because of how the analog stick is mapped on these levels, but just do the best you can. And of course, in general, just play the level as fast as you can. Be in the air for as long as possible, do long jumps up the trees, don't snipe the fish here, don't even try. Jump off this leaf and onto the rocky platform as soon as you can, do the backwards fish snipe, and look at the patterns in the grounds respective to Crash's feet as a visual cue. Then come off this leaf as fast as possible too, chain these jumps, etc, etc. Spin these crates while grounded, that might take some getting used to. Long jump up the tree, all the standard crap. And then we're finally at the fun section. So unintuitively, what you want to do here is wait on the second last leaf for quite a long time. This is because the point at which the last leaf is triggered is somewhere around here. And you want to be running off the leaf so you get a little bit of a speed boost past that point for a little bit. At least if you want to play it a little bit safe, you want the speed boost. But we'll discuss that later. If you pay really close attention, then you'll see that as Crash is running in the same direction as the leaf, it's like it's accelerated a little bit since obviously you're both going in the same direction. And so with this trick, there is a window of variation for when Crash can begin running. For example, in this clip here, Crash starts running forward when he's about 3/4 of the way through the bonus platform. If you wait much longer than that, then you're kind of waiting through the trigger for the final leaf at that point. In this example here, I don't think I need to slow it down to show that I'm not really waiting long at all. And then this one, as already shown, is something of a halfway point. Now, what's the difference? Why should you care? The longer you wait, the easier it is, but the slower it is, put plain and simply. Because when you wait, assuming that you aren't waiting for too long, when you run across the leaf that's going the same direction as you are, if you wait, then you are doing that when you have already passed or are passing the trigger for the final leaf. Therefore, the leaf will be closer to the plant that you're trying to land on by the time you get to it. Just take a look at these screen caps. All of these are screen caps of the first frame that I hit the jump button. It's a little bit subtle, but it should be noticeable that the bottom right one has crash quite a bit further away than the top middle one, or just the top one. If you can't really tell, take a look at the platform that I just came off. You can see a lot more of it in the bottom right picture. This of course means that the camera hasn't scrolled forward that far because I'm not that far forward. Regardless of how fast you take it, just try to come off this corner of the leaf here. Reason being is just that it's always going to be closest to the plant and it's going to give you the greatest chance of making the jump. If you elect to play it fast, then the leaf's rotation is just simply going to be a bit more to the right and it's going to be a little tougher to get off that corner, but it is still doable. Quite the opposite will happen if you are slow getting to the final section like I was in this attempt. The second to last leaf rotation ended up being really shit for if I wanted to run across it and get any acceleration at all, but the final leaf rotation was really good for how the corner was kind of centralized. If you remember me talking about subtle analog movements at the beginning of the section, like don't go too hard diagonally left or right, that applies here too. If you take a look at this clip, I go really hard right, really hard left, and don't use any subtle movements whatsoever, and I get punished for it. I don't make the jump. Another problem that partially caused the first problem is that when I was standing on the second to last leaf, I wasn't standing on the far right side like you were supposed to. I was a little bit too far to the left, and thus I kind of had to go really hard right if I wanted to make it to the corner. I also get punished because I didn't get any real coyote time off that final leaf, which you definitely want to do. Besides that, a few of the only problems I can really think of that people have with catching this is catching the thin ass hitbox in the middle of the plant. Trust me, it's there. It's just really thin and really, really hard to catch. It's also really easy to slip off, which is always fun. You should also probably try to avoid doing this if you can help it. Believe me, it can happen. And you can't really practice this entirely accurately unless you just load back into the level, but the best way that I could find to do it was to just off respawn, wait until the plants in front of you stop snapping, and then just go. And then it's kind of close to how it would look in a run. Not really, but it's still decent for practice, I guess. But yeah, I think that's about all I have to say about the difficult version of Upstream. Cool, I hope this tutorial helped. If you still need a hand, feel free to comment down below or join the Crash HD speedrunning Discord server and leave a message in either the Crash 1 general or Crash 1 any or completion chats. Yeah, that's it for me.